Maria touched upon quite a few facets of the current reality. Like, as someone who's starting, what do you do?
Well, I think it's deciding where you want to go. There's a lot more options, right? Each industry is specific. And what do you want to do? So when we started just a couple of years ago, we didn't even have a UX, UI differentiation, right? So you kind of had to do everything. You were a designer, you're expected to do everything from the experience all the way through. Now there are actual specialties within. And I do agree the hardest part is finding good information, because we do have a very cluttered and noisy climate now of influencers who have 3 years experience, but yet are incredibly entertaining, right? And some of the advice is good, some of it's terrible. And it's hard to know at the beginning, what is that good advice? Now, there's a lot more of it. So there is an advantage of that. The wealth of content is available that wasn't available then. I mean, when I was coming up to learn more of the business side, I started a podcast on product to start to interview people. And through those interviews, you start to suss out the patterns of what works, the patterns of who you want to emulate and what you don't, right? And neither is right or wrong. And I think that's also important. But you do have a lot more choice. And I think deciphering what resonates with you is probably harder today, but there is more available to find the path that is right for you. I do think we are at a bit of a dearth of that industry expertise that our colleges used to provide, right? Where they were the trusted institution and they would kind of start to mold the best practices. We're missing that today. We don't necessarily have that anywhere. It's probably a hole for someone to fill. And I think that's probably part of the struggle of being a young designer today.
Yeah, I think so too. And I find that it's indicative of the times too, this whole plethora of information. I mean, every industry has that. No matter, even if you want to become a nurse, right? I think that is not just a design problem. I think it's a global problem. So many industries have that. And I think with design, what you're seeing now is you're seeing these boot camps almost, where you go into school, you learn design in 4 weeks, and then bang, you're eligible to get a job. The good news is that, on another hand, is that now design is front and center. It has a seat in the room. Every single organization is so design oriented. So that is kind of the good news. You know, when we started, it was very restrictive. I mean, if I look at IBM, you know, I started, there was maybe 300 worldwide designers. Now there's like 4,000 designers. So what does that tell you? That design is really so important in our industry, in our world today, as with this overloading of information. It is scary, but I think that there is, you know, so much opportunity as well. And there is also very concentrated disciplines. When I started, I was a design researcher. Do you think I ever did design research? Absolutely not. It's just you have to be like, you know, everything, really. And today you don't. You have an opportunity. If you really want to focus on something that you're so passionate about, you can actually do that. And that's a wonderful opportunity for people who are just starting out. And if you really believe in it and you have a passion, I think and it shows and it comes across, and someone sees that who they're hiring, I think, wow, you know, that's amazing. Throughout my career, I've seen good designers, bad designers in between, but the people that really have that passion, that love for it, it shines through. And I think that is something that's really important. And I think that transcends time.
I agree with that. You made a comment though about like the nurses and the specialties. If you go to Ontario and you want to be a nurse, there's like a specific minimum criteria that has been widely accepted. And then you're talking about these boot camps, they promise you something, but there's no widely accepted criteria on what it means to be a designer. And that's where I'm going back about the information. Yeah. I don't want to chastise all boot camps because I haven't been personally to each one of them, so I can't give you my opinion. But how do you know the quality and how do you know that you're ready? What I find, and maybe it's my bias because of my background, is that a lot of people that come out of boot camps are missing that business savvy layer, and they have learned a cookie cutter formula of now I do this, now I do this, now I do these, rather than, okay, if I'm solving a business problem and I also have to take into consideration these other elements, how do I apply certain things I've learned to actually solve these rather than just go through the motions I learned?
You ask Google.
Yes, let me ask Google that. So I think Michael also made that comment. I do think there's a void to be filled, and hopefully we'll get to a point that being a designer, there's like a minimum criteria.